Welcome back to my channel, everyone. It's been a minute. But hold on. Something isn't right. I'm not wearing any clothes and my office is a disaster. It's a complete mess. What is going on here? You know what? What I think I might need to do is actually take my meds because I just went back on them after not being on them in like a decade. So I think that might make a difference. So I'm going to take my meds and then we're going to try this again, all right? 1, 2, 3, go. This is what it's supposed to look like when you have a clear mind and you're motivated and you're prioritizing things like I'm supposed to be doing. I am not only just like your textbook case of ADHD, I am like the final boss of the ADHD world. And you know what? We're going to talk about that today. So it all started the day I was born. I was a very interesting child. I wasn't like the other kids. I didn't really quite fit in anywhere. And I was very smart, but only when I wanted to be. Or really, when I was interested in something. And it provided me all the dopamine I needed in the moment until it was depleted and I had none left for anything else. And that's the thing. My parents realized that. They noticed pretty early. This was the 90s, so they really did try their best. They got me tested and put me on medication. And this is kind of where the topic of the video really kind of starts to solidify, because we're going to be talking about ADHD medication and my journey with that. I was diagnosed with ADHD right around 8 years old, and they put me on Ritalin, and that was an interesting experience, to say the least. There were a lot of things about my body that I didn't realize were a problem until adulthood, when I had to really figure things out. I just remember that it worked, but it felt like absolute garbage. I felt like absolute garbage. My parents were like, we got to take him off of this. This isn't working. Like, was I focused? Yes, I was over-focused, to be honest. I was doing better in school. It was like I've been living my life without glasses on, thinking that I can see, and then I take my meds, and all of a sudden, so many ADHD people can really resonate with this experience. From day one, very first pill, it's like putting your glasses on. You're able to focus. Your emotional regulation is like on point, because that's another thing that we didn't realize about ADHD until a little bit later, how much your emotions are dysregulated from it. And all of these things just the blocks started they just started going in all the right places. But those side effects and what I wish I would have realized when I was younger was that those weren't side effects. More on that later. So my parents took me off of it and we were back to square one. They were like, we're not putting him on this. We tried doing some research, finding out things that helped, avoid, certain dyes and certain, processed foods, and taking vitamins that are good for your brain, and certain, fruits and vegetables that were supposed to help. They started having me drink coffee at like 10. I started drinking coffee, and that was the only thing that was close enough to help. So we tried again when I was about 13 years old. I was in middle school at this point, and we're like, there were more ADHD medications available. I was going to try Concerta, which was also methylphenidate, which is Ritalin essentially, but it was the long-acting form. And it was supposed to last a lot longer, and it was just reformulated and it processed in the body a little differently. So I tried Concerta, and that was like probably the worst experience I ever had on medication. It was just, oh my God. So this is where those particular side effects with stimulants started for me, was the nausea. And my stomach was always hurting. I never felt like I wanted to eat anything. And then I also started having really weird side effects too, with down there. Guys, come on guys. When you've been in a cold pool for a little too long and you get out and you're like, oh. It was very much like that, but worse. I got taken off of that. And I think at that point, my parents were like, you know what? Stimulants aren't working. Let's try something different, like Strattera. I went on Strattera, didn't have any side effects with that, but the pills just didn't work for me. Didn't do much of anything. And I didn't try meds again for the longest time until I think I was 19 at this point, and I was in college, and I was like, I'm going to go back on the meds because I'm in college. The same thing happened. It's just like my body at this point, I'm like, you know what? My body just knows. My body just knows. And I did this on my own, without my parents. I was like, I'm going to try to find it myself. I'm going to try to find the right medication experience myself because I so desperately feel like I need to put those glasses back on my brain. I went back on Concerta. It was the same thing. And then I tried Adderall. I didn't have a lot of the same side effects like the nausea. It helped me focus, but way too much. It regulated my emotions, but way too much. It was so strong with the mental effects of it that for me, I don't feel like myself. It sucked away all my creativity, everything about me that made me feel different. And I love feeling different, especially like as an adult. I'm like, it's like my brand. It's like, I love to be a unique, kind of quirky, weird person that has this creative energy that creates things that are unconventional and, out of the box. But with the Adderall, it removed that from me and I got really depressed because I just didn't feel like myself. So I went off of that. I didn't try medication again until I went back to college in 2015. So when I was 24, I went back on medication, but I was like, I'm going to try something different. And I went on Ritalin LA, and it was a slam dunk. Ritalin LA is another long-acting form of methylphenidate, but it's different because it's in capsules and it's biomedical, meaning it gives you a delayed and an instant. So when you take the pill, you have your instant release, and then when that wears off, the other one kicks in, carries it over. And I only really needed it for about 6 to 8 hours anyways, because that's when I was in school, and it worked for me, and I succeeded drastically in school. I was more successful in my grades and in everything that I ever was in my life. The glasses were back on, and it was amazing. Unfortunately, it made me... Well, I'm just going to be frank. I kept on going to higher dosages that I didn't need in order to lose weight, and I abused it for that reason. And because I was on such a strong dose, the effects that it had on my mind were way too strong. I was extremely anxious. I was crashing really hard off the medication, and ultimately I decided to go off of it because I didn't feel like I could do it healthily because of the other thing that I was dealing with my body dysmorphia and a lot of the issues that came from that, and I was using the medication to actively harm myself. I went off of the meds, and I stayed off of them for almost 10 years. I lived my life unmedicated. I felt like I was fine and I didn't need it. And that brings us to now, where I realized that now that I'm in my 30s, what made me decide to go back on the meds? Recently, like as of a month ago. I thought I just was a very broken person at this point. I was like, I have really bad anxiety. I have IBS, which the anxiety worsens. I've got all these problems. I feel sick all the time, even though I'm not sick. The anxiety makes me nauseous. My family was telling me that I really also needed to go on anti-anxiety meds because of how it was taking over my life. And I talked to my doctor. I was like, is there an ADHD medication that also treats anxiety? And her answer was very interesting. She said, you have ADHD. And you're unmedicated and have been unmedicated for 10 years almost. That's why you're anxious. You treat the ADHD, the anxiety goes away because the anxiety is a result of your overstimulation, your emotional dysregulation, your autonomic dysregulation. All your body is in a constant fight or flight response. That's why you always feel sick. And I was like, you mean to tell me that my ADHD is not just the mind, like it's responsible for all of my other issues that I'm having with my body and all of these other things, my anxiety? I just thought it was an attention deficit disorder. I didn't realize that my ADHD was responsible for all of these problems that I had. So I tried it. And I went with the same thing that I felt worked for me. My doctor knows about my history with my self-image issues and my behaviors in the past regarding it. So she told me, she's like, we could go back on the Ritalin, but here's the thing. We're just going to be very cautious about any change in dose. So she put me on 20 milligrams. However, in 2015, I started on 10 and it worked very well and I moved my way up, right? I'm a larger person now. I'm bigger. I'm more muscular. I've, been working out for 10 years. At this point, I'm a lot more healthy. So, maybe I could just go straight to 20. The adjustment period was very rough. I felt sick all the time. When my meds wore off. When my meds were in my system, I felt great. But when they wore off, I started having all those rebound effects and everything was terrible. They put me on guanfacine, which is also known as Intuniv. It is a stim-free ADHD medication that a lot of people use in combination with stimulants to kind of help regulate the nervous system. And that definitely helped during my adjustment period. I had to make it through those really rough few weeks until I realized it doesn't suck anymore and everything feels great. You mean to tell me that my entire life I've been an ADHD person who's sensitive to stimulants, and maybe the reason this whole time that I struggled finding an ADHD medication regimen was because I was just simply put on too high of a dose and wasn't giving myself enough time to adjust? All I had to do was work my way up and find a comfortable spot. That's it? That's all I had to do? Wow. It only took me 33 years to realize that. And that brings us to now. We actually stopped doing the Ritalin LA entirely and just switched back over here. Actually, this is the Ritalin LA. I still have some left. The Ritalin IR, the instant release, methylphenidate, 10 milligrams is all I need. So I take one in the morning, lasts 3 to 4 hours. I take one around lunchtime, 3 to 4 hours, and I take another one in the afternoon, 3 to 4 hours. That's how long they last. That way I feel like I'm medicated most of the day. And when I crash, I don't notice really that much crash symptoms. My emotions are usually stable. I get a little tired and maybe my brain gets a little bit more chaotic and a rebound effect of that. But I've noticed that my IBS symptoms have improved. My anxiety has gone to virtually non-existent. I feel motivated. I feel like I can prioritize things better. Everything just feels better. Imagine that. And then, though, don't get me wrong. If you still choose to be unmedicated, that's completely your decision. And I did it for so many years. But for me, I have realized that ADHD isn't just like a problem that you can fix, like certain vitamins. It is an actual deficiency of dopamine. Our brains just don't produce enough, and we need the reuptake of that. And it's really helped me, and I don't plan on going off of it. If it ever causes me issues, I'll just try a different one. I am not an amphetamine person, so that's going to be your Vyvanse, that's going to be your Adderall. I just don't do well with them. I do better with methylphenidate. And I know some other ADHD people that are the opposite of that don't do well with what I'm on, but they do better on Vyvanse or Adderall. We're all different, and our bodies work differently as well. So the Ritalin for me is working flawlessly. A lot of people actually who don't like Ritalin usually criticize it for the sharp peak that it has when you take it. I like it because it shows me that it's working, and it doesn't last long, and it levels right off to normal. And so I like it. It's almost like having an espresso in the morning and in the afternoon and later in the day. So I really do enjoy my regimen now. I feel much more balanced. I feel motivated. I feel like I'm just, I got laid off in December. And I just feel so ready to start a new job and dominate it and do really well. I'm ready to start working on more movies and more music and YouTube videos and all the things that I love doing, because now I have the dopamine to be able to do all of those things. And that's a huge factor too as to why my presence on YouTube has been so inconsistent. I've been coming up with a lot of ideas since I released that video where I talked about I'm done with the algorithm and I just want to do what I want to do. And I have a whole list of things I want to do, but now it's time to actually do them. And I'm really excited. Thank you guys for watching my ADHD story. I figured this was a really good video to kind of kick off like this whole new era for me of talking about different topics and different things that are outside of the world of film. From this moment forward, I'm just going to be making YouTube videos about whatever I want. And I'm not paying attention to the niches, make riches situation. I'm not going to be paying attention to all of this algorithmic, formulaic stuff that YouTube kind of pushes on creators. And I'm just going to do things my way. And it starts now. So thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. And we will see what happens in the next one. Who knows?